Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. I hope everyone had a good break, a week that we were off. Sorry, I'm just getting this set up. Okay. So, we're heading into okay, I'm back. All right. So we're heading into somewhat of the final stretch. I think we have, including today, six more classes. And then your final reports, essays will be due. The outlines are due by the end of today, correct? Is that what I said? Yes? No?
Correct.
Correct, thank you. I noticed, I checked earlier this morning, some of you have already submitted them. Some of you are still working on them. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Those of you who have submitted, if you want to make any changes to them, you know you can always resubmit. The importance of these outlines, I cannot stress enough. So I have no problem if you want to tweak them or go back to them. It's going to be your blueprint that is going to guide the writing of your final reports. I've returned your annotated bibliographies and your literary reviews, which I realized I hadn't returned to you, so you should have all those in your assignment portals returned to you. Anyone who is missing anything because it's a little scattered, some of you were doing revisions, some of you sent them to me through Mayo. It's kind of all over the place. So if anything is missing in terms of returned assignments, Mayo me, and I'll track them down. Okay, and that would apply again pretty much exclusively to those of you who have submitted things through Mayo. What I want to do today is I have a couple of PowerPoints. I want to return to a PowerPoint I have on logical fallacies. I remember I posted and we went over that document, the lengthy one, 2 weeks ago. But I want to review it. The PowerPoint, I think, will simplify it a bit. It is something that you really want to be attentive to in terms of the...
Sir,
Yes.
sorry, I have a concern.
Yeah.
I just checked the Omnivox correction and I realized I sent you like the wrong file. I sent you like my English midterm instead of sending you my annotated bibliography.
Yeah,
I just see that mistake right now.
Yeah, I remember that now. So yeah, so send me the
Okay. I'm
Yeah, no,
sorry.
you're not the only person in my classes that have done that. So
Okay.
yeah, you should. I mean, that should be clear to you now. So
Yeah.
there may be one other person in this class who
Yeah.
did a similar thing. Just send me the proper assignment, and then I'll get to it and get it back to you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so logical fallacies, we're going to talk a bit about that. I have another PowerPoint I want to go through with you, which is a general guidelines in terms of writing a research essay. One of the things I also want to talk to you about in terms of, and I imagine you may not have had a chance to really look through all the comments on the annotated bibliographies. For the most part, they were good. You're finding, some good sources. But what was noticeable to me, and you'll see a lot of you in the comments, I'm suggesting that you add one or two more secondary sources that are of a higher academic or scholarly content. All right, many of you, and it's understandable and it's viable, are using newspaper articles, Gazette, or from CBC and things like that, and that's because many of you are dealing with issues that are quite fluid, right, relating to the COVID. But you do want to have at least a couple of secondary sources that are of an elevated nature, okay? When you get to university and you're doing research and you're writing research reports and research projects, they're going to be much firmer in insisting on peer-reviewed material, right? Newspaper articles are not peer-reviewed. And it can be problematic, especially in given the direction that news media has drifted towards in the last few years, where often they become infused with opinion pieces as opposed to hard, objective reporting. Okay, so you'll see that in the comments, to give some thought to going to Google Scholar, or if you have access to other academic databases. All right. The other thing to keep in mind when it comes to your secondary sources is doing the annotated bibliography is not just an exercise. The whole idea behind it is that you're finding sources that not only are directly related to the subject matter that you're dealing with, but are also viable and usable in terms of the specifics of your project. How are you going to use these? Where do they fit into your argument? Where do they fit into the specifics of the problem you're addressing? And where are they fitting in terms of the solutions that you're going to be proposing? Right? So many of you did a proper annotation. You focused in on the most important points that the article was dealing with. You summarize it and so on, but you weren't being specific in terms of how you're going to use it. Remember, these aren't just 7 to 10 sources that you can slap on to the end on a works cited page. They're meant to be incorporated into that final essay. And you can't force that. I have no problem with you adding secondary sources or revising your bibliographies. If you're going to come across a material that is more relatable to the specifics of your project, if you find that some of the sources that you have now you're not using, yes, you can still include it in the works cited, but you want to have that 7 to 10 that are actually incorporated into that project. All right, and then now's the time to think about it now, not in 4 weeks. All right, and that also relates to these outlines that you're pretty much finished with. Some of you, as I said, have submitted them. I've left it open. If they aren't submitted tonight, I don't mind if you want to take an extra day or two to tighten it up. All right, and then what we're going to be doing in the next few weeks, as you're actually engaging in the writing, is those outlines are going to be with you and can be modified, not to be submitted again, But for your sake, remember, everything we're doing here is designed to aid you in writing the final report. As you know, if I give an example, if you in the movie industry, right? First day of shooting, you have a script. What that script looks like after 4 or 5 weeks of shooting often is quite different, because changes are made as the film is being made. Okay, there's rewrites, there's all kinds of things. So, you know, that outline that you're doing is meant to have the work as a blueprint, a foundation, but can be modified as you engage in the actual writing and putting things together. But as I've emphasized, the more time and effort you spend in that outline, the easier everything's going to be down the road. Naomi, do I see your hand up?
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you. So I was reading over, and I mean, the instructions that you gave for the assignment weren't, very clear from my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't sure if you wanted us to do one word or to do phrases. So I did one word, and I mean, I separated the way it works for me. And is that okay? Because I mean, it makes sense to me, but I mean, I do want a good mark.
Right. Well, I think what I was saying is there's different types, right? If you look at the document that I posted on outlines, right, there's different types. And what I was emphasizing was the second type, which is to write it out in more completely. All right. So I haven't seen what you submitted already, Naomi?
I did.
I did. Okay. So I haven't looked at it yet, but it sounds like that maybe, and again, not so much for the grade. I know you're concerned about the grade, and this will apply to that as well. But it's more, yes, I know it's working for you, but you want to present it and submit it in a manner that it would be workable for someone else as well. In other words, when I see the outline, I want to be able to say, oh, okay, I see exactly what you're doing. I see how you've structured the structure you want to follow. I see how you've broken it down into paragraphs and how you're dealing with this subject here and so on, how you're integrating your social science disciplines. So if it is...
Would it be possible to bring up mine? I just submitted it, and I'm sure it would be helpful for everyone else to see,
good idea.
What exactly they're supposed to do.
Yeah, let me...
Thank you.
No, that's actually a great idea. Let me go pull it up. Again, I haven't looked at it yet, but... Sorry, we're getting there. Let me see if I can pull this up. There we are. Okay. All right, everyone can see that? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I see what you're saying. All right, so let's look at it, and then together, actually, this is a great idea, Naomi. Together, we can see if we're getting a full understanding of what Naomi is setting out to do, okay? So what you've done here, I can see right off the bat, I like that you're breaking it down into sections, right? So that's giving you the idea for the structure. Introduction to the question, how has isolation due to the COVID-19 pandemic encouraged the predominant eating disorders in female teens and young adults? Okay, so that's the question you're addressing. Brief overview of main categories: restriction, social media, fear of the unknown. Tie in and conclude purpose, increase, possible solutions, topic outline, new restrictions, social life. Okay. Right. So what's the problem you're addressing here?
It's in my question. So my problems are where I said brief overview of main categories. My things are restriction, because you're going to be at home, which I broke down in the following paragraph. social media, and the fear of the unknown. So those are my under topic outlines. Those are my 3 main points.
Mhm.
And then I incorporated my social sciences within, as you can read, I mean, it says like anthropology and stuff underneath. So, I mean, for me, that's clear enough. I mean, it helps me make all my sentences so I know exactly what I'm targeting, but
Mhm.
I had no idea what you wanted really.
Well, again, and so if other people were, if it wasn't clear to others, you know, I will suggest you go back and look at the handout that was posted in terms of the outlines, right? The one that we went over with in class. So, yeah, this would be good as an early draft of an outline. But what I'm noticing right away that I don't see is a problem statement, like specifically, what is the problem that you are addressing? It is incorporated here, and I can tease it out. But what is, I think, going to be helpful in your outlines, this goes for everyone, is a very clear statement as to what is the problem you are addressing. And ideally, the solution you're proposing. The emphasis is on the solution. The problem needs to be defined, but it's the solution that is what the project is all about, right? So this is what we want to achieve in addressing the problem, and this is how we're going to go about achieving it. And that should be clearly revealed in the outline, as much as is possible at this stage of your research. Right? That's what I meant earlier, when the outline will evolve and grow and then no longer becomes technically an outline, right? It's that transitioning from the outline into the actual essay writing. But yeah, I mean, this is apt, this is appropriate, I understand it, but yeah, I would like to see more. This is, and again, let me pull up the document that we went over, and we can look at them together. Let's see where it is. Hold on. Just give me a second. Oops. Do everyone see this? It's the outline PowerPoint. Yes?
No,
No?
No.
Okay, so
no.
let me do this again. Share screen, outlines. How about now?
Yes.
Okay, so again, we went over this. I'm not going to go over the whole thing again because we went through this 2 weeks ago. Whoops. All righty. What happened? Let's try that again. There we are. And as you were doing it, Naomi, like here, when you see the help a writer see the overall picture. Yeah, I'm sure that you see the overall picture, but you want to design this outline so that others can see it as well. All right, that's what I was saying, when we last met, is it starts with just, scribbling down notes and ideas. Bringing that in terms of doing revisions on it into a format that then evolves into something that is clear to others, not just yourself. And that allows you to have more depth for yourself, but also in the case that we're dealing with, where it's an assignment that needs to be submitted, it allows me to have a clearer picture of what you're doing. So this is like the different types of outlines, right? This is a topic outline, which is somewhat like what you've done. But this is, remember, and I thought I was pretty clear with this, that what I was asking you to do was the sentence outlines. Okay, if I wasn't, I apologize. But I am looking for more of them. There's two types. There's the, what happened here? The topic outline, which is pretty much what I'm seeing that you did, Naomi, and then there's the sentence outline, which has more details.
Perfect. Because I took my notes in class, but I was reading them over and I didn't have anything.
Okay.
And then I looked at both of them, and then you said when you start with one, stick with one. So I had started more sentence, but then I went into word form, and then I went back into sentence. So I said, you know what, maybe I'll just cut it out and make it all just word, because you didn't post that you wanted that in your
Okay, then I'll take responsibility for that. And let me be clear now. What I'm looking for is more of the sentence outline, not the topic outline. Okay. Now, again, yes, technically it's due by the end of today. If you need an extra day or two, I think you've gathered for this course, we have flexibility. The reason we have the flexibility is I really want you to have outlines that are not only going to hit the parameters that I'm asking for in terms of making it a sentence outline, but also that's going to make it easier for you because you will have written out sentences that you're almost going to be able to incorporate directly into the essay, or at least to have as a launching point. Right? It's a great way, especially for those of you who suffer occasionally from writer's block. You have something there that you can work with. Okay? So, and if you have what Naomi has submitted at this point, it's just a matter of expanding it. And from what you're describing, Naomi, you've already done that. And then you kind of went back, right? So you probably have all that material written down in your notebooks and so on. So it's just a matter, and think of it this way, while you revise your outline, it's going to give greater depth and substance to working towards that essay. And I want you to be thinking about it along those lines, especially those of you like Naomi and many of you who are really well on your way at this point. Right, I've seen what you've done with your bibliographies and so on, and you've got clear direction. You know where you're going. You know what you want to do. So treat the outline as something that will allow me, combined with your proposal and everything else, to know exactly what you're at least setting out to do at this stage. With the understanding that may change over the next few weeks as you actually engage in the writing. And if you are finding other source material, especially those of you who are dealing with the COVID situation, as you know, it's quite fluid. So things are changing almost on a daily basis. And that can be frustrating, but at the same time offers you different approaches as the changes occur. We're going to have a press conference today at 5 o'clock with Legault. His 5 o'clock press conferences usually mean big announcements. Okay, I don't know what it is. Fingers crossed that it's not going to be locking us back down here on the island of Montreal, but it could really change much of what our lives are going to be like, goes without saying, but also may change some of the thought processes you have regarding your topic if you're dealing with the COVID situation. All right, so you want to be able to manage the fluidity of the project you're working on if it is related to something that is happening and current as we speak. Okay. So back to, let's go take a look at that again. So if we come back to Naomi's, right? So you have everything you need here as a, a point outline. Just expand it. And one of the things I will suggest and recommend, and you've kind of done this here in terms of putting your question, but you can also put in this introduction and this area here, state specifically, it's a good practice to get into, and it's something I also noticed in the proposals and pretty much all the assignments, is a very succinct, clear, concise statement as to what the problem is. And that you should all be able to do at this point. You need to be able to do that at this point. You need to clearly define your problem that you are addressing, or the situation that you're looking to improve. What's also going to be very helpful at this stage is a clear, concise statement as to the solution. But you may not have that fully developed yet. That's understandable because that may evolve as you engage in the writing. But at this stage, the problem should be clear. You have to have that clear understanding of the problem in order to come up with a viable and feasible solution. So I would suggest putting in something as simple as problem statement. All right, and then that would be here in the introduction. Just so it's clear for you and obviously clear for me. Right? And that way I can respond to that. And if I feel that there's an issue with your problem statement, that it's not as clearly defined as it should be, I can respond to it and say, you need to, what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that? If that is an issue. And we spot it now, not, a week before the essays do. Again, it's one of the ways that this course evolves, and that's where it comes with the flexibility, is we can do a lot of different things here that are going to specifically address the issues that arise as you are preparing to write a research essay of this length. Okay, so Naomi, is that clear?
I think so. I'm going to incorporate what you said, and I'm going to do my best.
Yep.
And one more question. You posted, I think it was, maybe it was the proposal. I'm not sure which one, but you posted a corrected copy and there was no mark at the bottom.
Okay, so that would be, did you submit more than one?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'll need you to do, and this applies to everyone, if you receive the return of your assignment and you're not seeing a grade or comments, it's probably because you submitted more than one. And it just returns, and when I return it, it just returns one of the 2 or 3 that you submitted. So Naomi, what you should do is mail me, and then I'll be able to, send it right back to you through Mayo, because it's not going to do it automatically through this. Is there anyone else who had that problem?
Thank you.
Let me go and check and see. Sorry, it's hard for me to keep track because I have so many assignments I've been returning over the last few days. Hold on, let me just check. Oops, that's not the right one. Hold on, sorry guys. Yeah, so there might be 1 or 2 other of you. Any case, so I'll get that to you. Naomi, I know that you're probably all concerned about grade though as well. Am I correct in making that assessment? Naomi?
Repeat?
Are you concerned about your grade? Do you want to know what it is? Can you hold out? You can hold out. Fear not, you did well, okay?
Thank you.
All right, and I'll get that back to you right after class, okay?
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Frida, hold on, I'm just checking I sent mine through okay, yeah, so if you sent it to me through Mayo, Frida, send me a Mayo, and this goes for anyone else. Send me a Mayo reminding me that you sent your assignment through Mayo. Okay, I should have a folder with it in it. I hope. If not, I'll track it down. Okay. Again, it's a little topsy-turvy because some people were doing revisions and sending to and then everything, and I get so many Mayos every day. So if you sent me assignment through Mayo, send me another Mayo and put in the subject heading something that'll alert me to assignment, something with assignment in it. Okay. And that way I'll track it down. It should be marked. It's just a matter of me finding where it is in the folder and then sending it back to you. Okay. Other questions or concerns about assignments, about how we're structuring the rest of the course? As I said, I think we have 5 or 6 weeks left. Concerns about where you're at in terms of your preparation. Again, with the annotated bibliographies, the things that struck me the most were many of you were not clearly indicating how those articles, how you're going to use them specifically in terms of your project. Also, very importantly, and it was good looking at Naomi's outline, and you should all incorporate this into your outlines if you haven't already, and certainly be attentive to it, is the 3 social science disciplines. How you are going to integrate them into your final project. Right? It doesn't mean that you have to have a section on psychology and a section on whatever, depending on what the 3 are. You can do it that way if it lends itself to the overall structure and the pattern in which you're following in order to make your case, make your argument. But it needs to be in there, right? Again, the key to this course is integration. You're demonstrating your ability to draw on these different social science disciplines, recognizing how they all relate to the specifics of your project and how they relate to each other through the lens of your solutions that you're proposing and the specifics of the problem you're addressing. All right. That's what we want to be working on diligently over the next few weeks. Okay, it's time to, once you get these get your outlines to me tonight or the next day or two, and certainly when we get back next week, you want to be at a stage where you are doing a draft, writing your introduction. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on starting next week. I want you all to start working on an introduction. Next week, if you've started to already, great. But by next week, you want to be really engaged in that. And one of the things that I'm going to, I keep talking about developing some kind of workshop format here. No, it's okay. So let me be clear, and actually I'll post something in the announcement. 3 social science disciplines, not 2. We talked about this. I think in the outline it said 2. But as was pointed out when we were doing our oral presentations with Valerie here, no, it has to be 3. All right, and she made that clear to me as well. 3 social science disciplines. But that's not going to be difficult. The social sciences really touch on pretty much everything. All right, but thinking about it. If you've only been working with the idea of 2 at this point, the first thing you want to do is think and be clear in your mind what the 3rd one's going to be, or 4. You can do more. Again, a lot of your projects will lend themselves to numerous different social science disciplines. Okay? So you want to be thinking as we proceed in how you are going to be regularly talking about them in terms of how you are proceeding to achieve the goals that you are suggesting should be achieved in your solutions. All right. So this is the time. This is why the outline is so important. You can start doing that in the outline. And again, back to the idea of the workshop, which is how this course is meant to be meant to unfold. Obviously, that's a little more difficult, in this format. And I'm still trying to figure out the best way to approach that because, I'm just looking at a bunch of blank squares. So I'm trying to come up with ideas. I know that there's breakout rooms and all this, but I'm not sure how that's going to work in terms of how we can, in this time that we have together, do the workshop type of thing. Though Naomi's given me an idea, if I can put up examples that you have been working on and go over it, even though it's very specific to that particular person's introduction or whatever we're looking at, I do feel it's helpful for everyone in terms of what is being said about that specific one. So that's where I'm thinking, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to approach that, which we will get into starting next week. And it might be something along those lines, and of course, I'll be encouraging volunteers to say, okay, have you written an introduction, a draft of an introduction? Let's put it up there. Let's go and let's look at it closely, everyone together. And then I can give my comments. Others can give comments. That will help whoever is volunteered to show their introduction. And I believe it will help everyone else in riffing off of the comments that are being made about it. Okay. I'm also toying with the idea, and I'll decide this for next week as well, of having you write an abstract for the essay. And I'm more and more leaning towards that. I can't make another assignment for you, right? The outline is complete. But I'm thinking of asking you to incorporate an abstract into your final essay. You should be familiar with these abstracts now, right? In your research, you've come across them. You should. This is, again, one of the things you're not going to see when you're using articles from the Gazette or from Global News and things like that. But when you are looking at peer-reviewed articles, for the most part, you're going to see abstracts. And I want you to be thinking about your project, your essay that you're writing, as being something that would be submitted for peer review, so that you bring it up to that scholarly academic level. As well as doing an abstract really helps you organize in a quite concise way your thoughts and ideas about the specifics of what your project is about. So I'm anticipating that for, again, next week, that we're going to talk about abstracts and start writing them. And that would go, and the abstract, which would have to be, chances are, redone before the final submission. But in the process, and you should be thinking about this now, and I would suggest you think about it over the next week, of if you were asked to do an abstract right now, based on the information and the research that you've done up to this point, what would that abstract look like? Remember, an abstract is very short for the most part. And it's a great exercise in honing your abilities to be concise and focused and to the point. which is what you have to do in an abstract. All right? So that's how I'm seeing the next few weeks unfolding. Well, abstracts, introductions, and then body paragraphs, looking at it, and we can all feed off each other as we do this. And again, for those of you who are willing to share the work that you've done up to this point, as Naomi did today, obviously I would suggest that's going to have a great benefit to you, because you'll get my feedback directly and perhaps your peers' feedback, which will help you make it better. And for everyone else involved, you will be able to incorporate much of the comments that are being made about that specific one into your own writing. The other thing, as you can tell, I've been doing a lot of thinking over this week about this course. The other thing that I'm going to try to arrange is I'm going to want to meet with each and every one of you over the next 2-3 weeks. Whether we do it during this class time, or if we make arrangements outside of this class time, is to be determined. But I'm going to want to meet with every one of you and go over where you're at in detail. Make sure everyone is on the same page and is not falling behind in terms of the timing. So again, that is something that will be, I don't know how I'm going to do it, if I'm going to have you sign up at different times. It may be something we may have to do to some extent during this class time, because our schedules are all over the place. But I want to meet with each and every one of you at least once, if not more, to go over where you are in terms of your progress. And of course, that's not at the expense of making whatever arrangements you want with me to meet and discuss things at any time where we can coordinate our schedules. Questions?
No.
Okay, we're good. So, just again, on the outlines, if you've submitted it and you want to modify it, you can submit a second one. For those of you who are still working on it, yes, technically it's due, I think, by midnight tonight. If you need another day or two, I'd like to have them all by Wednesday, though, so that I can start looking at them. Wednesday, no, what's today? Tuesday, Thursday, 2 days. A little off on the days. Okay. All right. Okay. So, goodness, 9:15 already. What I wanted to do is look at a couple of PowerPoints fairly briefly. I know some of you have already indicated that you want to talk to me today after class. So when we do wrap up, I will be here to meet with anyone as you see fit. And this shouldn't take too long with these PowerPoints. Okay. Sorry, I gotta find it. I tell you, you'd think by now it would be easier for me, and it's really not. My goodness, I have too many windows open. Now again, what I'm about to show you here with fallacies is meant to complement the document that we went over 2 weeks ago. There we go. Now, the reason I'm spending so much time on dealing with these fallacies, these logical fallacies and so on, is I'm seeing especially over the last couple of years, more and more students falling into the traps of fallacies. I have theories about that. The changing world in which we live, the more that the media and politicians and so on are doing it, and it almost normalizing it. It's not normal. And it's extremely problematic when it starts to become normalized. So I'm putting this, not just in this class, but in all my classes now, much more emphasis on being attentive to recognizing. Starts with recognition. When you're reading fallacies, when you're hearing fallacies, by recognizing it, then you are more prepared to avoid engaging in fallacies of your own. So again, this is a bit of a review. Complement what we did before, but be attentive, especially now that you're getting into the writing of your own essays. Okay, it's a misleading or unsound argument. It's an error in logic. All right. One of the things we have a tendency to do as human beings is find ways to use what we perceive to be rationale, which is often pseudo-rationale, to defend an error in logic. It doesn't work. You get away with it. That's the problem. And more people are getting away with it. And that's what's normalizing it. And it's not just a big issue in terms of this course, this project, the essay you're going to write. It's a big issue on a much larger scale in terms of what people are thinking and how people are reacting to what they're hearing. And those actions have consequences. This is basic stuff, but I'm going to return to this in our conversations over the next few weeks and maybe even draw on some examples that you're being exposed to, whether it's through advertising or whether it's through the news, that you may not be recognizing yet, but which is actually in play. Okay, so fallacy. Mom, everyone is going to the party, so I should go too. Okay, this is, again, you can, when I say this is the bandwagon fallacy, if you go back to the document that I posted 2 weeks ago, the one that we went over in class, you can have more detail as to what the specifics of a bandwagon fallacy is. And of course, you can always look it up. This is just a general overview. Okay, so the bandwagon fallacy is when the author tells you it is right to believe something because everyone else is doing it. All right, you can see how easy it is to slip into this one. You want to be attentive, especially those of you dealing with COVID-related issues right now. Just because everyone is doing this doesn't mean that it's logical for you to do it. Whichever way that's going, you have to supply more evidence, and everything in terms of logic is evidence-based. So you have to supply the evidence to substantiate the claim or the action. Remember, never assume that everyone is like-minded. That's the bandwagon fallacy. This one's the red herring. You probably all like this one. Teachers must give all students good marks. After all, classes go more smoothly when the students and the professors get along well. So this is technically called the red herring fallacy. It's diverting the reader's attention from the real issue by giving support that has nothing to do with the argument. Now, this one can be quite insidious and subtle in how it's employed. So if we look at the examples, teachers must give all students good marks, because after all, classes will go smoothly when the students and the professors get along well. So if I were to give everyone in the class an A on the first day of class, right, then we'd all get along well. But would I be doing my job, and is that the mandate we have in this particular context? Right? So the argument that's being made here is a diversion. Very common. And if it's dressed up and written elegantly, it becomes convincing. You need to be able to recognize it. When you're reading, when you're writing your own stuff, and when you're watching the news or anything else, because it's going on all the time. Oops, hold on. That's what we just did. This is another very common one. Okay? Active euthanasia is morally acceptable. It is a decent, ethical thing to help another human being escape suffering through death. If you just read that, it may sound, yeah, what's wrong with this? You have to be attentive to it. This comes back to critical, close, analytic reading. Essential when you're doing your research, essential when you're doing the revisions on your own essays. This is circular reasoning. The authors here, whoever wrote this, gives no new supporting data. The premise is our restatement of the conclusion. The premise, active euthanasia, is morally acceptable, right, is the same thing as ethical thing to help another human being escape suffering through death. It's circular because what you're saying here is the same thing you're saying in your conclusion. This is obviously an abbreviated version of it. But what you haven't done here, okay, is given the supporting data that demonstrates and substantiates the claim that euthanasia is morally acceptable. Your premise is already your conclusion. You haven't proven it. It's a logical fallacy. Okay. And you don't want to fall. This is, again, I see it all the time. Whoever's writing this is going under the assumption that the conclusion has already been determined. There's no argument being made here. Therefore, no evidence to support it. Nuclear energy is a risk, but everything in life is a risk. Every time you drive a car, you're taking a risk. If you're willing to drive a car, you should be willing to have nuclear energy. Sound logical? Non sequitur. Assuming a relationship between two entirely unrelated events. Now, again, what you need to be attentive to with this is, in terms of recognizing it, is the way that it is disseminated, the way that it is presented. Right? It sounds on the surface like it's logical. You have to be able to pick it apart and recognize that driving a car and dealing with nuclear energy are unrelated. And again, we see this type of fallacy all the time, especially in politics, where they're drawing comparisons between things that should not be compared. And it's done by people who are well schooled in the use of rhetorical devices. It's done with an amazing effect. and people are then sucked into this vortex. And once it starts, it's hard to pull yourself out of. This is, again, in the big picture, but also in the microcosmic picture of what you're doing in this course and all your courses. And certainly what you're going to be doing at university. When you're given assignments at university to do a critical reading of an essay, a literary review, whatever it may be, if you're able to spot the fallacies, if there are fallacies in that article that you're reviewing, and be able to identify what the fallacy is, you'll do quite well. You'll impress your professors. If you engage when you're writing in these types of fallacies, your professors will spot it. My roommate said her chemistry class was hard. And the one I'm in is hard too. Therefore, all chemistry classes must be hard. Right? This is an obvious example of the hasty generalizations. I probably write the word generalizations on my comments on grading assignments for all my classes more than anything else. This is authors in a nutshell, conclusions without sufficient evidence. A generalization often goes hand in hand with assumptions. You must always look for the evidence. That's especially with what we're doing in this class, insofar as it is a research project you're doing. A minimum of 7 secondary sources. There is evidence in there. And that's what comes back to what I was saying earlier, that you need to use those sources. And that's why, again, for many of you, the suggestion of looking for 1 or 2 more that are more scholarly and academic, where the evidence is more viable and credible than an article from the Gazette. Okay. So keep that in mind. Do not generalize. Do not assume that everyone knows anything. I've talked about this, and I'll continue to talk about it because I see it all the time. If nothing else, now more than ever, we should be able to recognize that no, not everyone understands this or knows this. And just in all the controversy around the measures that are taken to combat COVID-19, all the disagreements, all the different theories. Right? And remember as well, that goes hand in hand with that, you can't just dismiss those who you disagree with or who disagree with you. There's too many. You have to be able to hear what they're saying, and if it is erroneous, then you need to demonstrate how it is. Not just say, well, you're crazy, get out of here. No, you're wrong. Let me explain to you why you're wrong. And let me do it in a very concise manner. Avoid those generalizations. Poverty causes crime. You can make that statement. There's truth to that statement. But it's oversimplification. You have to do more with that. Keep that in mind as well with the projects you're working on. You need to elaborate. And part of that elaboration is incorporating your evidence. Not your opinions, concrete evidence. Poverty causes crime. How so? You may say, wow, it's obvious. Don't treat it that way. I'm going to tell you what's not obvious to me. Explain. And you want to approach your problem solving in this course in that manner. Because if you give me something like this, when I'm marking, I'm going to say, how so? And you can roll your eyes and say, well, you know how so, sir. But no, this is academic work we're doing here. You have to prove it. I ate Basil's cooking, and then I felt sick. Therefore, Basil's cooking made me sick. Okay. The operative word here, this is called the false cause. The operative word here is the assumption that because event B followed event A, then A caused B. It may very well be that Basil's cooking is what made me sick. This does not prove it. And it's always about proving it. I can't stress this enough. I ate Basil's cooking and then I felt sick. I sent out samples of Basil's cooking, the leftovers, to a lab. The lab did tests, and from those tests concluded that there was some kind of food poisoning in the food that Basil was cooking. Furthermore, it was determined that the food poisoning came from a knife that Basil used, because I sent the knife in for evaluation, and the knife hadn't been washed properly and therefore had bacteria left over from when he was cutting fish the night before. The bacteria mixed with the food he was cooking when I was there, and that caused the food poisoning, which I got after I ate Basil's cooking. Oh, so yes, Basil's cooking made me sick. I know it seems obvious, but the number of students I see who don't give that evidence, who do give me something like this, is overwhelming. Lay it all out. And if you haven't sent in all those things to the labs for evaluation, then you can't make this claim. It's the other thing to remember. You may honestly believe it, but if you can't prove it, you can't claim it. Then you're engaging in assumptions. Right? And I've done my little assumption word play with you in this class, yes? Yes? Why do we never assume? Have I done this with you? It's why we never assume things. Okay? Enough said. Either I go to the party or everyone will think I'm a loser. This is the false dilemma, the either or. It's oversimplifying an argument by reducing it to only two choices. Again, this is a very obvious example of it. This one can get complicated because often And this applies to you guys as well, especially given the nature of the subject and topics that you're dealing with, many of you, is there's a push for simplicity. And what I mean by that is there's a tendency for most of us to want an either-or situation. It's one or the other. That makes it so much easier in life, in general. Right? It's either black or it's white. It's either good or it's bad. Very, very few things are like that. Most of what we deal with in life is extraordinarily ambiguous. It's gray. There are many different possibilities. We don't like to deal with that because that complicates things. That means we have to put in extra effort and extra time to look at all those other possibilities. And that can be frustrating because at the end of the day, we're going, geez, I don't know. I want to know. I want to know absolutely. I want to know for sure. That's rare. And that has to be acknowledged that it's rare. And that is much more of a challenge when you're dealing with one of these subjects where you have to ultimately make a recommendation, a possible solution. Remember, we talked a bit about feasibility reports. What are the possible solutions to this problem? You can have a whole list of them. Then you shortlist that to 3, and all 3 are viable. Your job then is to decide this is the best approach. This is, of all the ones, I am arguing that this is the best solution, and here's why. You can only do that by recognizing that there are other possible solutions. And you have to do it in a manner that you entertain, you know what those other options are, and you've explored them as much as it's possible. So you can anticipate someone saying, well, what about doing it this way? When you're looking for just the either or, you're going to say it's this way or this way. Someone's going to say, well, what about we can do it this way or this way? You go, no, I dismiss you. Get away. I don't want to hear it. Well, that's not what's done in an academic scholarly environment. At least it's certainly what shouldn't be done. So don't look for the easy either or solutions. You have to put in the work to recognize the multiplicity of possibilities. Senator Jones would never understand the need for national health care since she can well afford to pay for private insurance. Okay. So this is the standard ad hominem, right, where you are ignoring the real issue and you attack someone personally. Right? This isn't something that I would anticipate that you will be tempted by in your own writing, but it is something always to be looking for when you're doing your research or in life in general, right? To dismiss someone because of their personal life does not necessarily have a correlation to whatever policy or whatever they're dealing with. It's done all the time. Just watch the news one day. It's quite insidious. Jazz is more complex than classical music because it's harder to play. So this is the begging the question fallacy. It's treating an opinion as fact. Right? Always essential to be able to recognize the difference. There are no alternative facts out there. A fact is a fact is a fact. And everyone can have opinions. But there's also a difference between an opinion and an interpretation of the facts. We looked at this on a few weeks ago. I'm not going to go on into it in depth, but remember it. When you're writing your essays, you're not giving your opinion. Your opinion, it starts with an opinion, is transformed into an analysis and an interpretation. Opinion is transformed by a rigorous attention to the facts and the interpretation of the facts, and through that interpretation, drawing on evidence to substantiate that interpretation. And the evidence needs to be rooted in fact. She should not have to pay taxes because she's an old woman with no friends or relatives. This can be referred to as ignoring the question. It's appealing solely to the reader's emotion with no factual evidence. Right? Again, you can see how appealing this type of fallacy can be. She should not have to pay taxes because she's an old woman with no friends and relatives. But again, there's no evidence, substantial evidence, that explains why she shouldn't have to pay taxes other than an emotional response. Right? You're hearing in the United States all this talk about forgiving student debt. All students who owe money because they have borrowed money to go to university, especially with the prices of university in the States being what it is, let's forgive their debts. It's a very controversial and fascinating subject. Okay? Because it sounds, so the question is, first thing you ask, why? Well, because, then they're going to struggle, they're going to have to pay it off over 10 years and so on. And you're going to see, if you look into this, the kind of debates that rage over this issue is fascinating. And much of it is predicated on emotional responses, pathos, as opposed to factual evidence. Because, of course, part of the counter arguments to that is, well, what about the people that paid off their debt? What about, the people that worked 3 jobs in order to pay off the debt, and now you're going to pay them back, etc. Now you're getting into numbers and so on. But the initial reaction is on an emotional, visceral level. You can't draw your conclusions solely on emotions. You have to make the argument. And that may sound cold and callous. She should not have to pay taxes because she's an old woman with no friends and relatives. Cut her some slack. Give her a break. Be compassionate. Be caring. You can choose to do that on your own. If you're the government, maybe if she owes me money personally. But it's not an argument. There's no evidence here. You must be able to see the difference. Working people are like slaves to their corporate masters. And like slaves, they have no freedom to do anything beyond what their master wants. This is the false analogy. Watch out for this one as well. And be attentive to this one, and especially with, when you're watching what's going on in the world, because these false analogies, what they do is, it's drawing the false comparison, so you're not making a viable argument. But it also then often diminishes. So here, people working are like slaves to their corporate masters, and like slaves, they have no freedom to do anything beyond what their master wants. So the analogy is suggesting that all working people who work for corporations are suffering on the same level as slaves. So not only is this logically flawed, but it's insidious as well, because it diminishes the suffering of the slaves. See this all the time now. Again, not so much applicable to necessarily what you're going to be writing, but you again look around and you see that this is being done all the time, and it's done very much for pathos reasons, right? To invoke emotion, get people all worked up by making a comparison to slavery or to the Holocaust or just something like that. But it's extraordinarily insidious. Questions? Now, again, as a reminder, put this, as forcefully as I dare. I really want you to look at these documents on fallacies and everything else I've posted, especially now that we're getting into the home stretch. Because many, myself included, often don't recognize that we're falling into these traps when we're writing and when we're arguing. Most of you, if not all of you, are dealing with stressful, high emotional content subject matter. You're all dealing with subject matter that you care about. Remember, that was the whole mandate as to why you pick your own subject matter. You all are coming into your projects with ideas already in place. Some of them very much emotionally driven. You want to start now remembering that you're going to have to step back a little bit and not let those emotions shape your arguments. I mean, they do. It starts with that. But as academics, you have to present it in a non-emotional way. You may, let me qualify that. There may be places in some of your subjects and projects that you're doing where you can delve into the emotional content of it, obviously. But in terms of making your argument, you have to bring it back to analytic logic. If you want that solution to be realized, remember, you have an audience. It's not me. I put on many hats when I'm being the audience. And you have such a diverse range of projects that I will be putting on more hats than usual. And remember, when you're doing the oral presentations in any case, there's going to be Valerie there, plus people from different departments. And your approach needs to be to convince them to follow through with the actions necessary to achieve the solutions you are proposing for a specific problem. You need to anticipate your audience. You're not just writing this essay for yourself. You're not just writing this essay for me. You want something to be done. A big component, which I'm expecting to see to some degree in your outlines at this point, is obviously the problem, the possible solutions that you are suggesting will resolve the problem, and the methodology that you are going to employ or that you will suggest others employ in order to achieve those solutions. This is, hear me loud here. I want a solution to the COVID-19 problem. The problem is COVID-19 is making our lives very restrictive. How do we resolve the problem? We should solve the problem by eradicating COVID-19. There's your solution. I think that everyone's life will be better if we got rid of COVID-19, if we got rid of this virus completely. I think that then we'd all be able to get back to normal, the economy would be back up, and so on and so forth. All we need to do is get rid of COVID-19. I can make all the arguments in the world as to why life would be better for all of us without COVID-19. But if I don't include a methodology as to how we get rid of COVID-19, it's worthless. Map out the procedure that needs to be followed in order to achieve the goal. It's absolutely necessary. And in that process, you are integrating not just the 3 social science disciplines, which are part and parcel of all this, but you are also integrating much of what you have learned in your years at college, high school, and throughout your whole education. Your ability to think critically allows you to draw on all the things that you have been learning and integrate them into mapping out the procedures necessary to resolve this problem. Draw on all of them. At this stage, include all the possibilities within reason. And yes, that may be modified as you start writing. But for now, be thinking. Remember, integration, social science disciplines, problem, solution, how do we get from here to here? You want to be able to present at the end of this semester in a manner by which you expect it to get done. That what you've mapped out is feasible. All right. I think I had another PowerPoint. I think it would be better to do the other PowerPoint next week after I've had a chance to look at your outlines. Okay? Questions?
Sir, I do have a question for
Yes.
my situation. So, as you know, I switched topics. I'd like to know if you want me to do an annotated bibliography as well. 'Cause I sent you my my proposal over my own. I'm not sure if you got it or not.
Okay. All right, so, okay, before I deal with that, just hold that thought for a minute. Is there any general questions about what we covered today? Keep in mind, the amount of, I've emphasized these logical fallacies, and you'll see next week as well, I'll be pointing out some other elements of writing that I spend a lot of time here discussing. I hope it's clear to you that I will be looking for this, and given the amount of emphasis I've put on them, logical fallacies, as an example, I'll be very disappointed if I see any of you engaging in logical fallacies. That's why I'm emphasizing it. It's alerting you to what I'll be looking for, and alerting you to things that will have a negative impact on your final reports. And we're going to look at the positive things too. As we start doing these types of workshops, keep in mind what I was saying is I would, starting next week, people share what they've done in terms of introductions. I will alert you, if not for next week, because I know you're still working on the outlines, that I am expecting you to be starting next week, in any case, writing your introductions and or your abstracts. And that's what I'm going to want to go over with you in class, if we have a chance, starting next week and certainly the week after, in the format that we actually started on today, thanks to Naomi's suggestion of putting someone's up on screen and going through it, but in much more detail than I did today. We can all benefit from that. We can go through as many as we can during the course of our time here in class. All right, so you all, again, I cannot recommend enough for all of you to volunteer to put your introduction up there, because you'll get the benefit of me going through it pretty much line by line. Okay, so be sure you continue preparing, finish up those outlines. As I said, technically they're due tonight, but if you need a couple extra days, I would like them by Thursday, again, so that I can start looking at them. Next week, I have a couple of more writing issues that I'm going to want to cover with you in preparation for the heavy duty writing that you're going to be engaging in shortly. But we can also start looking at things in terms of workshopping, introductions, abstracts, or anything else. We will also be talking about, to remind you, because you have an oral presentation that accompanies this. Your oral presentation is going to, in all likelihood, involve PowerPoints and slides. Some of you are dealing with subject matters and problems that require budgetary information. Okay, so you want to be thinking about that, right? You can't just say, this is what needs to be done, this needs to be done, this what needs to be done, because you have to anticipate first thing your audience is going to say, well, how much is that going to cost me? Be logical and anticipate objections. Anticipate those objections now and address them so that those objections don't come up during your oral presentation or in the comments when the assessment of your final reports are being done. We're good? All right, anyone who wants to talk to me about something specific regarding their assignments and so on, Domenico, just hold on. And anyone else, stick around. I'm here. The rest, I would strongly suggest you go and start finishing up those outlines, modifying them in accordance with the things that we discussed today. I will post the PowerPoint that we went over shortly. And for next week, as I said, we'll be looking at those outlines in a little more detail. I have a couple more PowerPoints dealing with writing issues, and then we will get into this workshopping environment that we'll be carrying through for the rest of the semester. Other than that, you're good to go. Okay?
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Bye-bye. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Okay, Naomi, I'll send you out your grades shortly. Okay, so those of you who are still here, who wants to talk to me? I know Domenico, you want to. Yes, you can start. since you-
Yes.
So
Okay.
remind me your situation. You sent me a new proposal.
Yes, I sent you to last, no, I think 2 weeks ago. I can't remember.
So
It was
remind me,
over mine.
the annotated bibliography that you sent, which I marked, I graded it, right?
Yes, that was for the old subject. Remember, I changed it up.
Okay. Yes, you should send me bibliography. I'm gonna wait until I get back to you on it. Remind me what the subject is?
The Keystone XL cancellation.
Okay. Yeah, go. I will track it down. I have your name, so I'll find it. So I will look at that in terms of your proposal.
Okay.
You should definitely put together another annotated bibliography.
Okay.
What I will tell you is, since I've already graded the one that you submitted, you will not get a lower grade than that. I promise.
Okay. Okay.
And
Thank you.
chances are, since you may be able to do better.
Okay.
If you want, but by all means, and try to get that into me by next week, because it's
Okay.
important that
I'll
you
try my best.
do your best. But it's for you, so that you don't fall behind in terms of being prepared to write. But yes, definitely do another
Absolutely.
annotated bibliography for me, if you can in the week. If not, we'll talk about it next week. But that's for you. It's
Okay.
not about the grade. It's about ensuring that you have your secondary sources that'll be appropriate. And I will track down the proposal and give you some feedback, certainly by next week.
Okay. Yes. I just want to let you know as well. I did my proposal and it's on the new subject. That was already done. So just letting you know. I sent that in, I think, last night.
Oh, what's that you just sent in?
Not proposal. Sorry, the outline.
Oh, okay.
I did a proposal on the new subject, so that should be fine.
Yeah. So your outline is dealing with the new one. Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
All right. That's it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
No problems. Okay. I see Jessica Cohen.
Hi, sir.
I see. Is that Maya?
Yeah.
Maya, what's up?
So for my proposal, I was looking through during the break. I was trying to find more solutions because you said I need to find more solutions, and it was very hard for me to find solutions. My project, I'll remind you, is on language laws in Quebec and the Bill 101, and I
Right.
did a lot of research and I couldn't find much to work with.
In terms of finding a solution to the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember, and as I recall, yeah, you had some good. You found some good material.
Yeah.
That gives you a lot of information about how the language laws are working.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I would suggest for that, and I'll do a little bit of research on it as well. But there's a new push by the Quebec government. I don't know if you've been following this.
Okay.
There's new reports that have recently come out that are suggesting that the French language is at greater risk in Quebec than it's been in a while.
Okay.
And the Quebec government, Legault et al., are preparing some new regulations.
Okay. I think I did see that.
That would be an area to pursue. It's topical, it's fluid, and there should be, you have some good, solid background scholarly information that you've already gathered in your secondary sources.
Mhm.
So you have, I think, plenty in terms of your background, historical context, the problem, though now it may be an evolving problem. And I think if you look at what the complaints are right now, that's galvanizing the government to take action, especially at a time of COVID,
Yeah.
when, you know, you say, well, Jesus, shouldn't we be more focused on this than that?
Yeah.
Why do they feel that they have to bring this up now? It would suggest that they're feeling a sense of urgency.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you might find some information there. Do a little bit of research with that,
Okay.
and do a bit of brainstorming, and then certainly no later than next week,
Mm-hmm.
we'll talk again. And if you're still feeling like, you know, then what we should do is set up a one-on-one Zoom meeting
Mm-hmm.
and go in it together in detail. Remember I said I want to meet with everyone over the next few weeks?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we could do this, could be over and above that.
Okay. Perfect.
But take a week, see
Mhm.
if you can find anything that's coming out of these new developments,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll talk next week. And if need be, we'll set up a one-on-one and we'll explore it together, and we'll get there. Okay.
Perfect. And I'm gonna work on my what's it called, the what's it called,
The outline.
outline,
Uh-huh.
so I could fix it. But I'm gonna do my research and then hopefully send it by the end of today. If not, I'll send it by tomorrow.
Yeah. No urgency. I mean, we're pretty good shape. We have 5 or 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll see next week is when because now that I'll have the outlines, is when I'm going to be really pushing for the actual writing to really take off. So take this week and really try and, you know, sort out these final few issues.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you,
Alright.
sir.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye now. Ali Hamza, are you there? Are you there or are you not? My sense is that you're not. I'm going to end the meeting if you don't respond